From Grangeville to Lapwai, we've got your District 2 breakdown right here on the Palouse Prepcast with Garrison Hardie.
That's right. It's another edition of the Palouse Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, talking everything in District 2 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Bainey and Garrison Hardie, the only two guys left on the planet who use Android phones. Am I right, Garrison?
Exactly. Yeah, the guys at my company love giving me a hard time about that. So
I saw that on social media, and I was cracking up because I know the pain. All right.
Good.
I'm not ready to switch over to
unite.
Right. I'm not ready to switch over to the dark side yet, being Apple.
Well, here's my thing, Brandon. I have no problem making the switch over to Apple. I think they have great products, whatever. But every time I think I'm up for a new phone and think about making the switch, Android comes out and says, well, we'll give you $300 off of blah, 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 blah. And I switch then. So that's my whole thing. Nothing against Apple. So I'll stick with Android as long as they keep giving me money.
My biggest problem with Apple is they're not user friendly with anything else. If you go with Apple, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You're pretty much stuck with Apple everything from there on out.
Right.
So.
Right. Whole switch. And folks forget the matchups and whatnot. Let's talk about no.
Thank you for directing me back on track here. I can get off on tangents sometimes. So
hey, I'm with you.
So yeah, Garrison Hardie is the guy I'm talking to. Friendly reminder, you can get this podcast a number of ways. You can get the audio only at IdahoSports.com. That's our website. Across the top of the homepage, there's the drop-down menu with all the Prepcasts. You click on the Palouse Prepcast, and it's right there for you. You can also download this podcast wherever you download your podcasts, whether that's Apple or Google or Spotify. I have an Android phone, so the app I use is called Podcast Addict. That's where I download all of my podcasts for Android users. Wherever you download your podcasts, you can get the audio there. You can also watch the video each and every week on the IdahoSports.com Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. So it was a busy week for you last week, Garrison. You did the double dip, as we talked about on last week's Prepcast. You had two games.
Absolutely. Yeah. We first started things off down in Lewiston for some 5A action with Lewiston taking on the Kuna Cavemen. Still love that name. And Kuna, obviously, we talked about them having to make the trip up from Boise all the way up to Lewiston to play that game. Early on, both teams had a little bit of jet lag almost, both off. And that's to be expected early on in the season. Offense is a little bit harder to get in rhythm compared to defense. Defense, you just got to line up, do your job, and then hit somebody. That's defense for you. So defense is always start a little bit ahead on all. We saw first couple of drives, both offenses stalled out. Give credit to defenses too, but it took maybe a quarter or so for things to really get going. And then as far as that second game, we were out in Logos, Moscow, Idaho, for Logos's first ever varsity game. So that was it was a really cool weekend for Jason and I.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. So yes, Lewiston got the victory over Kuna in kind of like last year. Both teams kind of lit up the scoreboard, 49-31 the final. What were your impressions of Lewiston coming out of the gate?
Well, I thought Lewiston played great both sides of the ball, but the thing that we talked about leading up to that, Lewiston's offensive/defensive line, and they really paid off in dividends. They were able to control the line of scrimmage for much of that game. So Kuna really wanted to establish the run game, but they had to stick to the shotgun a lot of the time and try to throw the ball over the top, which, they've done that in the past. So I think the guys on the team have are accustomed to that play style, but they have been trying to establish a bit of a run game. They weren't really able to do much of that against Lewiston because every time they did, there were a couple of Bengals in the backfield really mucking some stuff up. So Lewiston did a great job offensively. Again, took a little bit of time for it to get going, but they were really able to explode early in the second half. The only thing that I'm sure Coach Pancari and the rest of his staff will be trying to work on is the ability to kill games. They were ahead 49-21, I think, at one point, or maybe it was 49-14. And CUNA was able to fight the final line 49-31. So CUNA was able to force some fumbles here and there, and they showed a real fighting spirit. So Payne Carey, he was up in the press box after the game, and he said, yeah, the heart rate got going a little bit as CUNA cut it to an 18-point lead. So for Lewiston, my impression is great firepower on offense, smart coaching, tough defense, but they got to kill games.
Yeah, I was curious as to how CUNA was able to come back in that game because Lewiston did jump out to such a large lead. But okay, it sounds like they gave the ball away a couple of times, and yeah, they'll definitely want to clean that up as they head into tougher competition down the line. CUNA, we think, is still going to be maybe a middle of the pack team in the 5A SIC. All right, Logos played on Saturday. Can we start with the backdrop of the field? I don't know that visually there's anything like it in the state of Idaho. Kind of describe, and people saw it if they watched the broadcast on Saturday, but kind of describe it to our audience.
My dad kind of summed it up perfectly. He texted me midway through the game, "Field of Dreams," and he was kind of right. The backdrop was essentially these rolling wheat fields to the game. So we were playing out in the middle of the rolling hills of the Palouse, great setting. And then, of course, off to the left, you have the beautiful Moscow Mountains, which, by the way, the fire crews are finally starting to get the fire up here under control. So thank goodness for them and their service for that. Shout out to them. But in any case, the backdrop is gorgeous. The weather was perfect, other than I'm sure people heard me commentating, yeah, it's a little bit hot out here, which it was 80, 85 degrees, but after a period of time that really started to kick in. So credit to the players for fighting through the heat, because with the pads on it.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? There's where they're playing that field, there's no lights, so they have to play afternoon games typically when it's hottest, and it's going to be but on the other side, a lot of Saturday afternoons, which allows us to go broadcast on IdahoSports.com. You can do a Lewiston game Friday night and then a Logos game Saturday. It actually works out pretty well.
Absolutely, yeah. And for Jason and I mean, more high school football the better, so no complaints here. Except this coming week, which you and I will talk about later on. Lewiston actually plays a Saturday game, interestingly enough. So we'll be down in Lewiston once again as they take on Madison.
Yeah, that'll be a fun matchup for sure. So yeah, let's talk about Logos. I think coming in, people weren't sure what to think of the Knights. You know, they had played JV football, of course, but this was their first varsity contest, and they ended up actually impressing pretty significantly. What was the final score of that game again? 58-26 over Timberline from Weippe, and that, to me at least, was pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, we talked about that going in. With Logos had experience and they had some upperclassmen, but it was on the JV level, and we didn't really know how that was going to translate to the varsity side of things, especially against some pretty stiff competition at a school that is hoping, it has playoff aspirations and has guys back from that last year's team that went to the playoffs. So we didn't really know what we were going to get. But when I got out to the field and started setting up and saw the Logos team practicing, I thought, okay, they've got some athletes, and the roster size as well, I think paid dividends into this game, just because Logos, their roster probably doubled that of Timberline out of Weippe. And conditioning definitely came in handy for Logos. They looked fit, ready to go. That's not a knock against Timberline, as they just had a smaller team, and they've got to play both ways all the time, which can be tough, especially in hot conditions. But to kind of circle back to Logos, some of those kids had never played football before, and they just went out there and executed very well the first two drives. So they go down and score their first ever varsity drive. They score, jump on the board 8-0, and then on the kickoff, they kick it right at Timberline's front line. They muff it. Logos gets it back and goes down and scores again. Jason and I are looking at each other. Are we sure these guys haven't played varsity football before? Is it 16-0, just like that? Timberline would come make a bit of a push, but all in all, Logos was pretty firmly in control from the outset.
Yeah, so it was a nice way to start for them. 1-0 start to the year. It was kind of a mixed bag in terms of the White Pine League over the weekend. A lot of the teams were competing at the 8-man classic in Middleton. And I think the conversation, as it always does, has to start with Prairie. They played Glens Ferry at the 8-man classic and looked pretty good, winning 48-14.
I mean, what can you say? Prairie's just got so many weapons on offense, and they always put them in positions to succeed. And we saw that again right there. However, Glens Ferry should, I guess, come away with that thinking, hey, we held them to 48 because last year there were 5 or 6 games that I mentioned that they scored over 60. So this is a team that knows how to score. This is a team that plays tough defense too. I mean, they've held numerous opponents to very low numbers, and I guess I'm not surprised by that score line. Glens Ferry at all. They fought, but the Prairie is just a machine, and they're a team that once again everybody's going to have to look out for on the White Pine.
Yep. And yeah, defense is the name of the game in 8-man football. If you can keep a team to 14 points, you're doing all right. You're doing very well. Okay. Right. The team that was picked second in the preseason coaches poll was Clearwater Valley over in Kuski, and they were also competing at the 8-man classic. Now they had to play Raft River, which was the 1A D1 runner-up from a year ago. And just as an aside, I have selected Raft River as my favorite to win the 1A D1 state championship this year. I know that's going to upset the Prairie fans up north. I think Prairie is a very close number 2, and I would love to see Prairie and Raft River meet up because I think that would be a fantastic matchup. But for now, I've got Raft River slightly ahead of Prairie. They were more than slightly ahead of Clearwater Valley. They shut out the Rams 49-0. And I was surprised because you and I think both thought that Clearwater Valley was ready to take that next step at the state level. And this game, obviously very tough, but what do you make of that?
Well, it's tough to entire season off of just week 1, but opening game jitters and whatnot. But still, you and I thought Clearwater was going to be a threat when it came to the White Pine and all of D1 and whatnot. So for them to get smashed like that by your championship selection, which makes you look pretty smart right now, that is an eye opener for sure. I still think Clearwater is going to go on to have just a solid, successful season, and they're still going to make plenty of noise in the White Pine. It's definitely going to get, some losses like that aren't always a bad thing. If anything, it gives the coaching staff, okay, here are the areas that we really need to clean up. And sometimes it wakes the players up. Maybe they've been hearing the media and, fans talk about them as, Clearwater is going to be a big time threat this year. And maybe they kind of waltz into that game and it would be just on their skill and whatnot alone. But that certainly didn't pan out that way. So maybe it's a wake-up call for them, some cold water in the face, and dust yourself off, get back up, and get ready for week 2. And if they get a couple wins under the belt after that, they'll be fine. And again, it could be a good experience in the long haul.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think Clearwater Valley is still going to have a great regular season record. They're going to be in the playoffs. They'll be in the mix. It's just that question of, okay, are they ready to compete with the upper crust? And by the time the playoffs roll around, maybe they'll be a little more seasoned. That's just a tough way to start out of the gate. The third team from the White Pine that was competing at the 8-man classic was Lapwai, and they were picked third in the preseason coaches poll. And, not much was known about them coming into the season. They've always been a pretty solid program. They always seem to be in the mix. And I got to tell you, Lapwai, right out of the gate, having to play the defending 1A D1 state champs from a year ago, Oakley. Now, they lost 54-34, but Oakley scored a ton of points late. And that was actually a pretty close game through 3 quarters. And so I was really impressed with Lapwai. And I think their stock really rose because of that.
It just goes to show how competitive the White Pine is. I mean, Lapwai, you and I have talked about Lapwai quite a bit And, we always know they're athletes. It's just a question of are they veterans like in the past, or are they just a little bit more young and unseasoned? We're getting a little bit more of that variety this go around as far as football goes. But Titus Yearout's a name that comes to mind. As far as basketball, I got to see him play. He's a stud. So I'm sure he's going to have just as much impact on the football side of things at wide receiver, wherever they line him up. He's just an athlete. And that's just kind of Lapwai's mantra, just a bunch of athletes. And they are highly successful at whatever they do. Coaching staff, it sounds like, put them up for success. Oakley, as I remember, they've got a pretty decent size roster, so that I'm sure play too, maybe conditioning wise, because Lapwai a little bit smaller in that regard. But Oakley, that's a pretty strong statement out of Lapwai to go toe to toe with a team that took down Prairie and won the state title for 1A D1 last year.
Yeah, and a couple of weeks ago when we were talking, I misspoke. And Titus Yearout, he's playing quarterback for Lapwai this year.
Well, there you go.
And but he's such a threat running the ball that at times it's not necessarily quarterback type numbers, but he's a lethal threat back there for Lapwai. The fourth team that was playing at the 8-man classic is it was the only 1A D2 program at the event, and that was the Kendrick Tigers. And they came out and played Lighthouse Christian, a 1A D1 school, and held on 42-36. Now, just like I said, that Lapwai score was deceiving. This score was deceiving as well, because Lighthouse Christian kind of hit on like a couple of just like fluke home run type plays right at the end of the first half. Otherwise, the margin of victory is larger for Kendrick. And for a team we think is going to go pretty far in the 1A D2 playoffs this year, that was a great start for their program.
Absolutely. And for 1A, for the smaller programs like Kendrick, especially with them, the question becomes, can you stay healthy? And that's what's tripped Kendrick up in the past. Jason and I have covered Kendrick versus Deary in the past, and we got to see Kendrick up close and personal. They just had so many talented players on that team. But towards the end of the year, one of them gets banged up, and that just changes the whole playbook, essentially, of what the coaching staff has built around certain players being in certain positions. Well, when you take one of those guys out of the equation, it really throws things off when you're talking about these smaller programs. So for me, I'm not surprised to see this out of Kendrick, just because of the talented players that they've had through their program in the past, and the amount of points they're able to put up, the rack up. I'm not surprised. The question is going to be for me, can they sustain this as far as just being healthy and ready to go come playoff time?
Yeah, Coach Hobart does a great job with that Kendrick program. And it'll be exciting to see how they look as we get to late October and putting the pieces together for what we think and hope is going to be a long playoff run. Okay, you mentioned Deary. They were in action last week. They fell to Troy 36-18. I kind of thought coming into the season, Deary had been the second best behind Kendrick the last couple of years. I think they might slip to third this year. I think Lewis County, the co-op with Nez Perce and Highland and Cul-de-sac, I think they've got a good chance to jump ahead to that number 2 spot. They didn't play last week. Their opener is this week. Other scores that were of interest: Orofino went and played McCall Donnelly, a pretty tough 3A program, and were shut out 41-0. I'm not sure that's really indicative one way or another of how the Maniacs are going to be this year. And then, you know what? I misspoke. Lewis County did play in the opening week. They lost to Lakeside in a pretty close game, 30-26. Lakeside actually scored late in that contest to come away with the win. So I still stand by my Lewis County comment. Lakeside, of course, the district favorite over there in District 1. And then the last game that was on the schedule, it's that Moscow versus Grangeville matchup, which is kind of unusual, because you see a lot of times a school will play up a level or down a level, but very rarely do they jump 2 levels to play. And Grangeville's a 2A program. Moscow's a 4A. The Bears did win, but it was only by a score of 16-8, which I think bodes really well for Grangeville moving forward this year.
Absolutely. And can I say that it bodes well for both? I mean, for Moscow, this is a program that has honestly been bullied a little bit by past, even though they're a 2A school. Grangeville punches up, so to speak. They have a fantastic program out there. They have talented kids. They've sent numerous kids up to the college level to play football. They're just a blue-collared community that plays football the right way. So when Grangeville would beat Moscow, I really didn't see it as too big of an upset, even though as Moscow has more kids to pull from. But for Moscow to be able to beat them, I think that's something that they should hang their quality win that's against a quality program, albeit a smaller one. And for Moscow too, you had the questions. We talked about them before the season kicked off. They had a lot of offensive firepower gone, both at the quarterback position and then at the tight end spot, who, by the way, is off to the University of Utah playing football. So the question was, they did have some pieces back, but how were they going to respond? So for them to open up with a win against a solid Grangeville team, I think both teams, can come away from that matchup, even though it didn't go Grangeville's way. To hold Moscow to 16 points, a team that likes to play vertically and throw the ball a lot, is a good sign for your D on Moscow's side. To hold Grangeville, a team that can get very tricky with the different formations they pull off and whatnot. I think both teams can come away saying, hey, that was a good, hard-fought game. On to the next one.
Yeah, I think Moscow running back Isaiah Murphy is going to be a fun guy to keep an eye on this year. I think he's primed for a big season at running back there for the Bears. So let's move ahead to this week's slate of contests, specifically on IdahoSports.com. Garrison, you and Jason Hansen will be on the call. You mentioned it, Saturday at 3 p.m. at Lewiston High as they host the Madison Bobcats from Rexburg. That is now, hey, this is 2 home games in a row for the Bengals against 2 opponents that are having to make really long trips.
Yeah, exactly. And now Lewiston has a win under their belt coming in from CUNA. They saw some things that maybe they need to clean up from that game. All in all, offensively, they got the job done. Defensively, they showed up, other than a few cheap, scores towards the end of that game where the ball was turned over in their territory and they were having to come back and pick up that way. So again, if Lewiston can kill games, I think they're going to be actually a tough out. Obviously, Coeur d'Alene's the team that we've got to watch out for. But with this team, another team having to make a long trip. Granted, this Madison team did pick up a pretty impressive win in week 1, if I'm not mistaken, 49-0. So they're showing that they've got some firepower of their own. Why not go to Lewiston and kind of put that on display? So this could be a game where we have a lot of points on the board, both sides, if that Lewiston defense isn't able to maybe correct some things and get ready to go.
Yeah, I definitely think Lewiston should be favored coming into this game with Madison. The Bobcats, it's hard to tell on them still. They've got a new coach in Chandler Rhodes, and they played the final game at the Rocky Mountain Rumble this past Saturday. Madison, as the host school for the event, kind of got to pick their opponent, and they picked the weakest opponent, Bear River from Utah, which is right there on that Utah-Idaho border. So I'm not sure the win really indicates where they're at skill-wise yet. Now, we'll see against a really good Lewiston team where Madison actually matches up. But I think Lewiston definitely should be the favorite there. That's what I would pick if I were doing the picks. And speaking of picks, Garrison, on the homepage of IdahoSports.com, we have brought back our Gridiron Game Picks contest where the fans compete against you and I, the IdahoSports.com broadcasters and experts. Each week, we pick every single game throughout the state of Idaho, and whoever has the most picks correct by the time the week's over wins $25 in cash. Hey, that's not too bad.
That could go to your gas money right there. I mean, I'll take that. But I really don't like this because it makes me look less smart.
That's the thing. We're just kind of cannon fodder for the fan. But hey, this is our chance to prove that we really do know what we're talking about, and it's the chance for the fans to say, "Yeah, those guys don't know too much." And regardless, it's a lot of fun, and we didn't do it
right. Yeah. Well, you IdahoSports.com regardless.
Right. We always have a fun time. So yeah, we didn't do it last year because of COVID-19. Everything was just thrown into chaos. So we said, games were changing like day of. And so we're like, well, we'll bag it And we waited a week this year just to make sure that COVID didn't rear its head again. And, outside of a couple of games, I heard Timberline Weep had to cancel their game against Kamei this week, which is unfortunate. But for the most part, we're able to proceed as normal. So we thought, let's bring it back for week 2. And so get your picks in, folks. You have until 7:00 Friday night. Just go to the homepage, IdahoSports.com. It's right there at the top. Gridiron game picks. If you've already got a profile, great. If not, it takes 2 seconds. Doesn't cost you anything. And then you fill out the picks and go from there, and you might win. So it's nice to bring that back.
Absolutely. And it's just another one of the great features we have here on IdahoSports.com. Not only can you watch games from across, statewide, across the state of Idaho, you can also compete in fun little contests that we got going on like that, and get to know us, the staff, and as well as just continue to build that community out. So I think it's a lot of fun. I look forward to giving it my best. It's tough sometimes when you're focused only on one certain district. You don't get to see all the nuance maybe of other districts across the state, but I'm going to give it my go.
That's right. That's why you need to tune into all of our Prepcasts. We'll cover every single area in depth. So out there, fans, if you're watching or listening, just tune into every single one of our 8 Prepcasts we do each week. And through all of them, you'll be an expert on everything in the state of Idaho, guarantee it. So let's run through the rest of the schedule of games for this week. All the other games are on Friday. So Moscow, we mentioned a 1-0 start. They're going to host Clarkston, Washington. That's always a fun rivalry matchup there. And then when you drop down to the 2A level, Grangeville is traveling to Bonners Ferry, a 3A program. Grangeville still trying to get that first win of the season. And then after that, it's a slate of 1A games. Logos, we talked about Garrison, a 1-0 start. We're going to find out real quick if they're legit or not as they take on Genesee. It'll be the Bulldogs season opener. That'll be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, we got to chat a little bit with Coach Holloway after the game, after their victory against Timberline, and he said, "Yeah, this is really where we're going to see, how we stack up against some of the competition here in the White Pine, especially because Genesee, were it not for COVID last year, they probably would have been a playoff team." So it's incredibly unfortunate how that unfolded, and they still have that co-op agreement with Colton. So they do get some reinforcements as far as roster and whatnot there, which is big for 8-man football. As long as you've got some numbers to throw at the opposition, you may have a leg up sometimes. So at Genesee, they have a proud tradition over in Genesee. And it's going to be interesting to see how the newcomers, who albeit put on a very impressive display, showed that they have a little bit more athleticism than maybe some gave them credit for. Coach Holloway and his staff did a fantastic job, and they have some, Craig, one of the coaches over there, I believe, Skylar Craycraft is his name, I think. His brother, a former WSU wide receiver, is playing for the 49ers right now. So they've got some NFL influence over there, as well as other coaches who have, sons playing at the college level at NC State currently. So this is a team who is coached by a knowledgeable coaching staff. They have some athletes. We'll see how they do against Genesee, who, by the way, Justin Podrabski, this is going to be his first game with Genesee taking over. He was a former Idaho Vandal, so he's got his own knowledge cooking in this one. So this could be a very interesting chess match.
Yeah, the White Pine League, of course, with 8 teams, conference play starts like week 2 for some of the schools, right. So not much time. The other White Pine League game taking place this week will be a conference game as well. Potlatch will make their season opener, hosting Troy, who got that win last week over Deary. Speaking of Deary, they will be hosting Lakeside in what should be a pretty fun matchup. You've got Kendrick hosting Kootenai, and then you've got Lewis County traveling to Tri-Valley, a team that just got whitewashed in their season opener. And so for Lewis County, I think that's a great opportunity for them to bounce back and get to 500. But a lighter schedule, but it's still going to be a pretty fun one nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yeah. We always love broadcasting games down in Lewiston and whatnot. If you're speaking to District 2, that is, we have a lighter schedule.
Yes.
Yes. So we always love going down to Lewiston. Coach Pancari and his wife always make sure Jason and I are taken care of up in the booth, and a great setting. And we're looking forward to covering some more Bengal football. And it should, we talked Lewiston should be favored. So it's interesting to see how they're going to follow up their opening week victory.
Yeah, for sure. And real quick, speaking of the Bengals, I want to give a shout out to the Lewiston volleyball team. They hosted the Judy Fong Memorial Tournament this past weekend and got all the way to the championship match of that tournament, where they fell to Lake City. But still, coming in, Lewiston, I'm not sure was, at least in my mind, they were a handful of teams that could compete, but for Lewiston to get to the championship and have a great showing there, I thought that was a big sign for a Bengals volleyball program that wants to compete in the upper half of the IEL this year. So good job by the Lewiston volleyball team as well this past weekend.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week. It's a great way to see where you're stacking up going, as far as an opening season kickoff. You get to play some really good competition like Lake City. So for Lewiston to get all the way there, that should be some pretty good momentum as they head into the meat of their schedule.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, that's for sure. Cross country's often going, soccer, volleyball, football, and we're here each week to break it all down for you on the Palouse Prepcast. That'll do it for this week's edition. Now, Garrison, you're going to be out next week, so we're going to have a special guest host coming in. To be determined who the guest host will be, but
right. Well, I'll see if I can't get my co-host on here, Jason. See if he wants to share his knowledge or whatnot, or maybe you've got somebody in mind. So you should tune in, folks. Should be a good one.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a Don Majkowski, Brett Favre situation where you're Majkowski and you miss one time, and then Brett Favre comes in and never misses in 20 years.
And I'm history. No, you got to do what you got to do. I get it. I won't be too bitter.
No, the seat will be yours as soon as you get back. So have fun next week on your week off, and we'll break everything down, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Sound good, Garrison?
That sounds like a plan, Brandon. Thanks so much.
All right. Don't forget, 3:00 Saturday afternoon, Lewiston hosting Madison on IdahoSports.com. Garrison Hardie and Jason Hansen will be on the call. That'll do it for this edition of the Palouse Prepcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll see you back here next week on IdahoSports.com.